200 wyverns. Oh, 승리를 위하여. Whoa, 200 wyverns. Whoa, 승리를 위하여. We are the one.
Offering to the drum machine to put another face on my heart. The star symbol, the streaming color, the art symbol revealing. Not gonna be held back by the ranger's sound. No reaction without pain, I got far. Backpedal, angel's gotta give up the throat today.
Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a podcast about music, in which a group of friends gather together, talk about an album, share an album with each other one at a time. It's like a little book club for music. It's fun. It's a fun time to be had. I'm Petey, your man with no plan. Here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got Brett.
Guys, I have to admit something. I'm esports ready.
Mm-hmm. We've got Drew.
What's your APM?
Yes. And we've got Deej.
Hi, I'm David, and I have to live with that every day.
Yes. We're here to talk about music, not esports. That's a different podcast. sportsoddseners.com. Go check it out. That's a different podcast. We're talking about music. We're talking about an album. This week, the provider of the album is me. I provided for the group an album, and a very cool, interesting album from my, teenage years. Yeah, it was exactly my teenage year because it came out when I was 15.
Wow.
A really cool industrial metal album, band by the name of Fear Factory, with their album Obsolete. I remember this was right in the heyday of me getting into a lot of crunchy rock and metal and kind of doing a lot of things music wise, just listening music wise, and it's just something that is always an album I can go back to. Just
Petey, did you ever go to Ozfest?
No, I was poor.
Okay.
Yeah, true.
Fair.
I was far
Ozfest
away.
was the expensive one.
Yes.
Yeah, I was far away. But
I went to Coconut Grove Bed Race. That was the free event where I go to Coconut Grove and they have a charity bed race, and there was a concert there, and it was free.
Nice.
Cool.
I saw Dishwalla there one year.
Oh wow!
Oh
Wow.
my
Did
God.
you count blue cars?
Yes.
Dishwalla.
And then when I went home and I called to request that song, they actually played the song because everybody recalled the request, and the radio station was one promoting that concert. But still,
Yeah.
I called and requested a song, and it happened. So
Yep, you did it.
that being said, we're not talking about Dishwalla. That's another
Or
episode.
radio. Or
That will be
maybe
in the
we might
future.
talk about radio.
I actually have some things to say about radio on this
Yeah.
episode.
But we're talking about Fear Factory. Let's talk about expectations. I'll go with Brett to start with. Brett, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I wanted to figure out how many times it was going to happen, and in my typing I wrote Fear Factor, not Fear Factory, so that I figured I was going to do that a million times today. But I've not really gone out of my way ever to listen to Fear Factory. I remember them from video game soundtracks. I remember the Gary Newman cover. I remember people wearing the T-shirt, but I don't exactly remember ever being in a car, flipping through somebody's CD folder and being like, yeah, let's listen to this. So I came in here kind of I guess.
Yeah, I remember
Why not?
having that album and listening to my friend, being over at my friend's house, listening to that album and looking over like the liner notes with like the explanation of the story. But we'll get to that. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
Well, I never really listened to a huge amount of Fear Factory. It was something that like the people I hung out with in like junior high school were into it, but it just never was something that caught me. So like a lot of the bands from that era that I say this about, I was sort of excited to see what I missed because I heard like maybe a song or two and was just like, I'm going to brush this off. So going back to stuff like this is always fun for me.
Mm-hmm. David, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I was actually familiar with Fear Factory ahead of time. I was familiar with them from their Demanufacture album, their first album where they really kind of hit it big. And I remember hearing, particularly from this album, the song "Descent" on the radio, and thinking to myself, "Wow, it would be so much nicer if corporate rock radio, played more bands like Fear Factory, and less of the Puddle of Muds and Three Doors Downs of the world in the late 90s. Feel like rock radio in the late 90s probably would have been a lot more enjoyable back then.
Yes.
It was dark days for the radio.
Yeah.
Or like the post alternative rock into the like today has been a dark time for like contemporary hard rock.
Yeah. A lot of the world abandoned terrestrial radio in favor of streaming. I abandoned terrestrial radio the moment I could burn CDs.
Same.
Like immediately.
Zoom.
It didn't help that I
Zoom
only
was
it didn't help that my local rock radio consisted of two stations. One was the new rock station and one was the old rock station.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of cities are, Petey.
And they're both terrible.
Like,
I live near the greater Cleveland metropolitan area, so I got a fair bit of different rock stations, but I always listen to the same one. Was 88.9, the alternation is what.
yes.
Credit to Fear Factory for giving it that one shot with the song on this album to get on radio. Credit to them for listening to their record label and giving it a try. Radio airplay.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this album. Let's talk about it musically. This album is really cool. It is, I think, one of the great ways. I think if you look at some of the reviews that it got, somebody pointed out it's Ministry meets Slayer. I guess in a way, if you want to kind of sum it up.
I actually had in my notes Ministry meets Meshuggah.
Yeah, in many ways, a little bit of that, a little bit, Slayer, a little bit like it's very much like industrial meets metal. With a lot of both. It's very, the sound of machinery, music that is very like rusted machinery, rusted bloody machinery in music form. It's very dystopian.
Terminator 2,
music.
folks. Let's just throw it out there.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about
She
Terminator.
goes,
We're
she
not.
puts her hands on the fence and then it melts her skin off.
Yes.
And then there's James Cameron. Then he made a movie about a boat.
Yes, and then it's very rust colored. It uses a lot of guitars. Uses a lot of very crunchy guitars. Very like a lot of like riffing, as it were, rapid riffing. The drums play a big part. And in many ways the big thing that I would say is the big element that is one of the ones that I always sticks out to me is the using the guitar playing along with the drums in kind of like almost a machine gun thing. It's more prevalent in a couple of songs, but it's kind of like this beating the drums while riffing the guitar to kind of have like a machine gun fire kind of sound.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that what the cool kids call syncopation?
I'll say okay. I'm not familiar.
It's what happens when you go chugga 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 and the guy goes thumpy 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 with both his feet
At the same time.
at the
Yeah,
yes.
syncopation. So that's really cool. And then like the other big element is the vocals, where you've got your boy Burton C. Bell, your boy, your herd, Burton C. Bell. Kind of like it has this really cool mixing in with the metal like growl singing, but also bringing kind of like these operatic almost moments, not literally operatic, but kind of like this ballad singing, kind of epic sounding cool thing in some of the moments in the tracks, and it works really well and it's really fun. Ray Herrera back there on drums is really fantastic. The Executioner himself is really fantastic on drums, and there's a lot of elements. There's like even like little other moments like music, it just kind of has a nice mix of everything, kind of all doing their thing, all doing their part. The industrial metal style, it works really well. All right, let's get down to it. Brett, how would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes elements for you?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that I'm not the biggest fan of the new metal type thing, or the precursor to new metal, unless it's a parody of itself. I brought Guar. Like, come on now, I know how to have a good time. But like, I came into here with a pretty open mind. It's a groove first album. It's where the beat and the rhythm are extremely strong and in your face. You've got, your nearly Rob Zombie singing. You get drop tune 7-string guitars, which I think this was their first time using those. So then they can use the guitar as a percussion machine. You got the machine gun double bass, the stuff, tons of other things that I'm sort of not normally into, but like this is a genre that is made to be loud and abrasive. There are some like great, use of the time effects that are being used. There's some video game tone of late 90s to early 2000s in the digital effects. Like, that's the one thing that I don't think aged as well, but like it's very of its time, and like you just expect to be playing Symphony of the Night and listening to this album in the background as your buddy flips through a Guitar World magazine. And at that time the guitars were cheap. It's very of its time. It is very much. There were a few of these types of bands that floated around at the time that were that would write a story that goes along with their, that kind of band that are more than just the I want to sing songs about like how cool pyrotechnics are, or my car is really cool. Like this is one of those albums that gets a little. There's more to it than you would think if you're coming into this thinking, oh, this is another one of those.
Yeah, and I didn't touch on the fact that like this is technically a concept album, where there's a story of a far-flung, unrealistic future in which technology is taking over our lives, and we are slaves to a greater machine with no free will of our own. Totally unrealistic, people. Totally.
Robots. Spoiler, the track I selected has to do with cameras being everywhere and the police watching it everywhere.
Oh, Electric Eye by Judas Priest?
Exactly.
Yeah. That is a good song.
Yes. But yeah, moving forward. Drew, what would be the themes elements that caught your attention?
Well, this, like I said, was something that I never really got into because the chugging sort of industrial sound from this era was not really what I came to metal for. And it has it here a lot. It is overdriven. It is crunchy. It has that dropped sound that you hear. It's a very visceral feeling. I think they did it well. I think they did it really, really well. And you can't really fault them for that, even though it's not my thing. The sound it creates is very like intense and horrific at times. But like Brett said, there is a lot in here to like. There's definitely gold in the hills, as it were. In them there hills.
Them there hills?
Them there hills. Them,
Thar
that way.
Hills.
But there's really good composition. I think there's really good playing throughout. Again, the tonality and the style is not my thing, but the music itself I think is really, really good. And yeah, there were times in here where it like I didn't pick up on the story throughout, but I think it's really cool that there was one in the time like I didn't expect politics at times, and then I got it at times on a certain song that we're probably gonna all talk about. I think probably because it's really good. But overall, I think that it really, really did well in what it was for that sort of sound.
Mm-hmm. David, what would be some elements that caught your attention? How would you describe this album musically?
Petey, I think you and I are only about 1 year apart in age, so I think that Fear Factory came along for me at the same time as you, and we probably had similar reactions. Like I said, I wish there was more of this at this quality. Brett said that there were a lot of bands that sounded like this at the time, and this is very much of its time. But I would say for me, Fear Factory was in the higher tier of bands like this. I'm coming into this already familiar with the Demanufacture album. So coming into this, I was probably more open-minded than most. I knew it was a concept album. I'm totally down for a concept album. I love metal like this. I love strong, technical, concussive, intense metal a lot. So I was ready for Fear Factory. I was ready to just dive on in.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, and music is just so much fun, kind of like dive into like this intensity, and it just, yeah, like I said, it can kind of hit us in a specific time in a specific way, and kind of, yeah, I will admit that some of my love for at least a little bit, is nostalgia, but I think it's an album that I think holds up. There are moments that are very much of its time, but it holds up, and we kind of come into like the tracks. And you want to talk about of its time. Let's talk about the theme song for the protagonist of the story, Edge Crusher. It's a really cool establishing the song for like
Before
the
you start
character.
making your jokes, children, remember this was 20 years ago.
Yes, Edge Crusher. So edgy. It is a cool song. It does a really great job establishing the protagonist of the story, and it's fun. And it has like a very cool like hook. It also has a turntable solo, which is really cool. Provided by DJ Zodiac. On the ones and twos.
Relation.
DJ Zodiac, now the different DJ Z. Even a different DJ Z that we're familiar with. We have that makes a third DJ Z. Shout out to Zach Holder. But yeah, it's a turntable solo, which is cool and fun and kind of like out of nowhere, and it kind of fits well in kind of the mechanical sound of things. You get into a song like Obsolete, which has a cameo by Gary Newman providing the opening monologue for the track, which is really cool, kind of a cool moment. establishing the song. We got a song like Resurrection, which I think the main. I want to point out Resurrection. Like I said, this is like there's a lot of things you can talk about the story of the album. The story album was that they really like Terminator, and I think the biggest proof is that one of the lines of this song is "I must remove my skin to see belief in your eyes." It's literally they're just writing a line based off the part where Arnold Schwarzenegger rips off the skin of his arm to show his robot hand. It was like they wrote a dramatic moment based off of that scene where the Terminator showed off his robot hand to like prove his point. Which is really cool. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. It's a really cool way to kind of like media inspires other media, and it's kind of like this is a really cool like love letter to those kind of stories. Not just Terminator, but those kind of like sci-fi dystopian stories.
Not just the Terminator.
Not just the Terminator.
But mostly the Terminator.
But mostly Terminator, yeah. And I think they've admitted to their love of the Terminator. And also timelessness, because it has that Mario Salvio speech, I believe that's the name? Mario Savio speech that you probably heard in different places. It was the first time I've ever heard that speech. Throw your body upon the gears of the machine. The kind of like that moment, kind of using it well. And it was kind of a cool moment and kind of leads to a very cool epic song and a great way to close out the album. This heavy, intense metal album kind of closing out with this pensive, almost like I don't know the exact term for it, but like I don't know much about music. I'm sorry. At least not like how to describe things like officially, but it's like kind of like.
I will say that for Resurrection, I had it on my list as kind of an song, but I feel like it fits as the conclusion of the story because it is essentially the final track on the album. Because with the story of the album. It does not have a positive ending for our protagonist, the Edge Crusher.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits in that thematic way that it's a downer
a eulogy
ending.
in a way, and it works really well. But yeah, Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, the shock. No, this album opens up with one of the most 1998 sounding things I've heard in a long time. It has the modulated stereo effects. It's got chugga chugga. It's got double bass and palm muted drop tune shit for days. It's also the lead single off the album. It definitely lets you know this is what's going on. Later on in the album, there's in Descent, there's like this almost stoner metal feel, and it's kind of I don't know how else to put it, but it's more slow paced, while still having the edge that they were seeking. It was put together pretty well, and I find fairly noteworthy, along with Resurrection. It's 6.5 minutes long, and it has parts that sound full on anime action scene like pop metal, in a kind of neat way. There's also some story revolving around seeing somebody light themselves on fire and seeing a statue of Jesus or some shit. But yeah, there's some of that going on. But just to let you know that they wanted this to be the important part, they threw some strings in, which is like a thing. Yes, that's how you mean business. We got a string section here. Hear that cello?
That is so late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, but yeah, like these songs go places. All of them are pretty complicated, and this can't buy me love. These are pretty substantial songs, but like those were the ones that stood out to me. Mm-hmm. There's golden all up in here. I could talk about all kinds of noises that were made, and have just slightly more vocabulary than Petey.
Yes. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, Shock. Like Brett said, it starts you out with exactly what you're getting with this like a late 90s industrial sort of thing. You get exactly what you're getting into. A loud, in your face. The first words out of his mouth are yelled. Like, the song is just aggression, and you're going to get a lot of it. Securitron, Police State 2000 is something that it hit, and I was like, oh, all the people that I knew that were in the Fear Factory, like, they weren't the people I knew that were in the politics, but apparently there is some.
Yeah.
No, those are also the same people that were into Rage Against the Machine and didn't get it.
Yeah, there is a Fear Factory in this division. Yeah.
But holy cow, the song like that, and the cover, which was in my lineup, which I'm going to cover next.
In Cars?
Cover the cover.
Yes.
No, I'm going to cover it in my room. Where I'm sitting. But I was,
God damn it.
like I said, I was not expecting it out of this band. And the song in general was, I think, really cool and really ominous, and really sort of fit what they were going for with the lyrics. That to me is when you know the band's thinking it all the way through, is when you like the music is creating the mood that the lyrics are hinting to, which is this fear. Fear Factory. Weird.
Yes.
And then, like I said, the Google Play Music one ended with the remix of Here in My Car, which was super cool. Like, again, not something... Again, I was really far away from Fear Factory, and it was not something I was expecting to get a remix of Gary Newman's Cars.
Oh, you
with
weren't
Gary
around when
Newman
this
on
was
it.
happening?
Oh yeah,
I couldn't get away from this when it was.
this
like,
is what I was
radio.
talking about when I said Fear Factory listened to somebody at their record label and were like, guys, you're great, but we need something for radio. Just give us something.
One
You
thing.
know that
And they
guy
brought
who
Gary
also
Newman.
made. He also made long, weird songs about like robots and shit,
Yes.
like killing, like being
It's like-
sad because they killed all of humanity.
It's like,
And they don't have any more humans to kill. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely Use that guy's one poppy song.
What I'm wondering is if the cover or the inviting him onto feature on and provide the monologue came first. It was like he was in the studios for that thing and it was like, well, let's just do a fun cover of your song. Like,
While you're here, I don't know.
I mean, we got these keyboards. Like,
It
you might as
sounded
well
great
use
with
them.
it sounded great in a guitar riff. Like
Yeah.
that melody for Cars, I really liked it. The riff as a metal guitar.
yeah. But yeah, David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Securitron, Police State 2000. This song is so wonderfully, unapologetically 90s, but I love it so. Don't you change a thing about yourself. Securitron, Police State 2000. The opening melody of this song is a few seconds of metal that just pummels you in the head. And when I talk about metal that can give you a concussion, that's what I'm talking about. And yeah, it might be called Police State 2000, but hey, check this song out now. Wink. Also, Obsolete. I feel like this is a song that is not too long, but it's a pretty good litmus test for your tolerance for metal. It's a pretty unrelenting, kind of brutal song for what it is, and I really enjoyed it. Obsolete. Also, Resurrection, not my favorite, but thematically within the album, I think it's in the right place.
Yeah. Also, man is obsolete, erased, extinct. Yes. I think those are some of the fantastic tracks, and I think they work well for that reason. But let's bring it back around the horn. Talk about some conclusive thoughts. Brett, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Breaking news. This isn't really the music that I'm into. And that's not a big deal. there are a lot of great things that I'm not into. But like the fact that I kind of loathed this period in rock music and would spent my time. This was when I ate my vitamins and listened to music that was around from a long time ago, because the things that were coming out of the radio made me be like, huh? Yeah, give me more Temple. Like I'm not. Why am I not hearing Temple of the Dog? And now I'm hearing like Static X. Like, why are you making this a thing? But no, I'm happy that like any kind of theme album or any kind of album that this much effort has been put towards telling a story that 99% of people who are listening are going to have no clue or like not listen at all to the story. The fact that people are putting this much work into something like tells you something. Like about like they at least this is a project that I want more of these things to happen, even if I don't want to necessarily listen to them. But this is an okay time, and if you don't have a hang up like I do, this is definitely not a bad album. It's just something that I'm not into.
Yeah. Drew, what would be your conclusion on this album?
I think this album is one of the better albums I've listened to that I just don't really care for, if that makes sense. It's something that, like, I commend everything that's going on in here. Like, it is really well done. The story is apparently there. I missed it, except for the one song.
And Cars.
Yes, Cars is where the story really came through for me. But it's something that the musicality of it is really well done. It's really well thought out. And there's just good musicianship going on. And I think that part of it is that while the tone in the style is not something I'm super into, I can appreciate when good musicianship happens. And I think that happened a lot here. So if it's something you're even remotely into, I think that this is something that you should definitely give a try, because I enjoyed it for what it was.
Mm-hmm. David, what would be your conclusion on this album?
Not unlike Brett, this came out around the time where I realized most modern rock music was not for me, and I went through my spiritual journey discovering progressive rock. I will say through that time, Fear Factory, in my opinion, was at the higher end of this time period in this genre. And I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed what this was. Yes, it is of its time, but I was able to put myself in the headspace for that. And for all those kids that were wearing Fear Factory t-shirts, I definitely appreciated them. And I appreciated this now. I would say to someone that might be curious, I'm going to make a really weird comparison for you and say that if Meshuggah is maybe a little too much for you, you might want to maybe go a step down. Not like all the way down, but maybe like a step and a half. Fear Factory might be the band you might want to check out. Like, if Meshuggah is like a 5, Fear Factory would be like a 3.5. So there you go.
If it's like a Lucky Strike or a Camel Stud, this is more of like a a Camel Filter. It's good for your T-zone.
Yeah. This album and this band at this time was very much of its time. It's the we've talked about drop tuning on the Wikipedia. Is a drop A tuning.
Yep,
this is really cool.
That because it's a 7-string guitar, that means that the big old fatty fat low string is normally a B. Yes. It is now an A. Because that's how the alphabet works.
Yeah. But yeah.
That makes your guitar sound like a fart, in Brett Hibbard's opinion. But yes.
But they made it work, and in my opinion, for what they were doing sound wise. And the band is a cool band. It was a cool band, aside from the backwards and back and forth of who is officially Fear Factory nowadays and who isn't, which is kind of hilarious. You follow that timeline, but it is a cool record. It is very much of its time. It's worth like going back to and appreciating for what it was at its time. Fear Factory is a band worth exploring for like what they did as far as like their industrial metal sound and their niche in it. And it is a really cool album. It is an album I can always go back to and just like play from start to finish and like just jam out to. Even like every once in a while digging into the bonus albums, like weird covers that they had on the bonus album on there. It is an album that it's not going to be for everyone, obviously. It does have all those like those elements of like the new metal of its time in there. And it touches those, but I think it wields them a little bit more strategically and in more of a this is creating a mood kind of way, which I think works well. Yeah, Fear Factory is fantastic, and I think I enjoy them. All right, now we get into the main event of the evening. We get into our haiku reviews. Get to kind of summon things all up in poetic form. Let's get to it. Brett, what is your haiku?
We found something new. Chug a 7-string guitar. New metal screenplay.
Yeah. Drew, what is your haiku?
I can respect it, even not being into industrial stuff.
Yeah. David, what is your haiku?
Rise of the Machines. Brutal, but not too brutal. Way better than Gent.
Yeah. My haiku. Machine gun metal with a nice touch of drama, a good headbanger. Or a good head smanger.
No. There's not a lot of smanging to this.
No.
Oh.
You can smash the Control Machine if you prefer, but that's a different band. That's a band y'all would probably hate even more. But moving on. This, of course, you can listen to this album if you haven't already on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Follow along at home. Do your due diligence and your due diligence, as it were. Do all things. On that Spotify playlist is going to be next week's record, and it's provided by David Deej. What do you have for us next week?
Petey Rave Record Breakers fans, I will be bringing the brand new output from French metal act The Algorithm in compiler optimization techniques.
Yeah. So look forward
Pretty
to
much
that.
Jean-Jacques Perret.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it works. But look forward to that next week. But that is next week, and this is this week. And you can, of course, find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Brett is at Habib Ribbert, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XDrucifer X. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. If you want to email us, give us feedback. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube. If you want to watch the video version, you can leave us feedback on all those different places. Let us know what you think of the album or any albums that we talk about. Let us know what you think. Give us your haikus. Just let us know. Give us all your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Do the things like, share, subscribe, all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo!
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.